The bullet that grazed Isabella Pierce's shoulder in the summer of 1878 hadn't been meant for her, but the scar it left behind was nothing compared to the ones people couldn't see. She pressed her hand against the rough wooden counter of the general store in Oroville, California, watching the dust motes dance in the afternoon sunlight that streamed through the window. The small mining town bustled with activity outside, miners and prospectors rushing about their business. But Isabella felt removed from it all, like she was watching life through a thick pane of glass. She'd been working at the store for 3 weeks now, keeping her head down, speaking only when necessary, and trying desperately to disappear into the background of this sun-baked settlement nestled in the Sierra Nevada foothills. The bell above the door chimed, and Isabella glanced up automatically, her practiced smile already in place. The man who walked in was tall, broad-shouldered, and moved with the careful economy of someone who'd spent years in the saddle. His dark hair was longer than fashionable, touching his collar, and a few days' worth of stubble shadowed his jaw. What caught her attention most were his eyes, a startling shade of gray-green that seemed to see too much. "Afternoon," he said, his voice a low rumble. "I need some supplies." Heading up to work the Peterson ranch, Isabella nodded, pulling out the ledger. "What do you need, sir?" "Name's Isaiah Pierce," he said, then paused. "No relation, I suppose?" He gestured to the name painted on the store window, Bennett's General Store, managed by I. Pierce. "That's me," Isabella said quietly. "Isabella Bennett was my married name, but I go by Pierce now. It's my maiden name." Something flickered in Isaiah's expression, gone too quickly to read. "Small world. I'll need coffee, flour, sugar, dried beans, salt pork, and ammunition for a Winchester." As Isabella gathered his supplies, she felt his gaze on her, not intrusive or improper, but curious, assessing. She was used to men looking at her, some with desire, some with pity if they knew her story, but this felt different. When she reached for the higher shelf where the ammunition was stored, her sleeve pulled back slightly, revealing the edge of the scar on her shoulder. She quickly tugged it back into place, but not before Isaiah noticed. "That looks like it was painful," he said carefully. "It was a long time ago." Isabella's voice was clipped as she set the box of ammunition on the counter with more force than necessary. Isaiah held up his hands in a peaceable gesture. "Didn't mean to pry, just making conversation." She tallied his purchases, named the price, and accepted his payment in silence. As he gathered his supplies, he paused at the door. "I'll be in town most evenings. Peterson gives his hands Saturday afternoons off. Maybe I'll see you around." Isabella didn't respond, but she watched through the window as he loaded his supplies onto a sturdy bay horse and rode north out of town. She told herself the slight quickening of her pulse meant nothing at all. The next week passed in its usual rhythm. Isabella opened the store at dawn, worked through the day, and returned to her small room above the building at dusk. She spoke to customers, counted inventory, and kept the books with meticulous precision. She didn't make friends. She didn't accept invitations to church socials or town dances. She existed, nothing more. On Saturday afternoon, the store was quiet. Most of the miners had already come through in the morning, stocking up before heading back to their claims. Isabella was reorganizing the shelves when the bell chimed again. Isaiah Pierce stood in the doorway, hat in hand, looking uncertain in a way that seemed foreign to his usual confident bearing. "Afternoon, Miss Pierce," he said. "I'm not here for supplies today. There's a box social at the church tonight. I wondered if you might consider attending." Isabella's hand stilled on the canned goods she'd been arranging. "I don't attend social functions, Mr. Pierce." "Isaiah, please. And may I ask why not?" She turned to face him fully. "Because I prefer my own company. That's a lonely way to live." Perhaps I prefer lonely to complicated." Isaiah stepped further into the store, his boots echoing on the wooden floor. "I've been working at Peterson's for a week now. Every person I've talked to in this town speaks highly of you. They say you're honest, hardworking, and keep perfect books. But not a single one of them could tell me anything personal about you. It's like you're a ghost passing through." "Maybe that's exactly what I want to be," Isabella said, her voice sharper than she intended. "Did you consider that?" "I did," Isaiah admitted. "But I also recognize someone who's running from something. Takes one to know one, I suppose." Isabella's breath caught. There was no judgment in his tone, no accusation, just a simple statement of fact that landed like a stone in still water. "What makes you think you know anything about me?" "The way you flinch when someone raises their voice, the way you position yourself near exits, the way your hand trembles just slightly when a man gets too close." He held her gaze steadily. "I've seen those signs before. In mirrors, mostly." The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken understanding. Isabella felt something crack in the careful walls she'd built around herself. "I should ask you to leave." "You should," Isaiah agreed, but he didn't move. "But you won't, because part of you is tired of carrying whatever burden you're carrying alone." Isabella laughed, but it was a hollow sound. "You're awfully presumptuous for someone I barely know. You're right, I apologize." Isaiah turned his hat in his hands. "Let me start over. My name is Isaiah Pierce. I'm 28 years old. I've been working cattle and horses since I was 14. I came to California from Texas 3 months ago because I needed a fresh start somewhere nobody knew my name or my history. I'm good with animals, terrible at cards, and I make decent coffee over a campfire. I don't drink anymore, haven't touched whiskey in 2 years, and I'm trying to be a better man than I was." The raw honesty in his words left Isabella momentarily speechless. She set down the can she'd been holding and leaned against the counter. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I saw you in this store, going through the motions of living without actually being alive, and I recognized myself. Because when I look at you, I see someone who's surviving but not thriving. Because I thought maybe, just maybe, 2 broken people might be able to help each other find a way forward." Isabella's throat tightened. "You don't know what you're asking." "Then tell me." The words hovered on her tongue, words she'd never spoken aloud to anyone in this town. "I'm damaged goods, Mr. Pierce." Isaiah took a step closer, his gray-green eyes never leaving hers. "Then we're both broken and both healing." Something shifted in that moment, like a door opening that Isabella had nailed shut long ago. She drew a shaky breath. "My name is Isabella Bennett Pierce. I'm 24 years old. I was married when I was 19 to a man named Thomas Bennett. He seemed charming at first, attentive. By our wedding night, I learned he had a temper. By our first anniversary, I'd learned to recognize the sound of his footsteps and what mood they signaled." She watched Isaiah's jaw tighten, but he remained silent, letting her continue. "It went on for 3 years. He'd hurt me, then apologize, swear it would never happen again, be sweet for a while, then the cycle would repeat. I was too ashamed to tell anyone, too afraid of what he'd do if I left. Then one night he came home drunk and angry about a business deal gone wrong. He had a gun." Isabella's hand unconsciously moved to her shoulder. "He shot me. Said if he couldn't have me, nobody would. I don't remember much after that. The doctor said a neighbor heard the shot and came running. Thomas fled. They never found him, though they searched. The sheriff in my hometown in Nevada assumed he died somewhere in the desert. I recovered physically, sold everything I had, and came here 6 months ago to start over. But starting over doesn't erase what happened." Isaiah's knuckles were white where he gripped his hat, but his voice was gentle when he spoke. "Thank you for trusting me with that. I know it wasn't easy. Now you understand why I don't attend social functions or accept invitations from men," Isabella said. "I'm not capable of that kind of trust anymore." "Maybe not yet," Isaiah said, "but healing takes time. I know that better than most." Isabella studied him, this stranger who'd walked into her store and somehow seen through all her carefully constructed defenses. "What are you running from, Isaiah Pierce?" He was quiet for a long moment, and Isabella thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with old pain. "I had a younger brother, Jacob. When I was 25, we were working a ranch in Texas together. Jacob was 18, full of life and laughter, always getting into harmless trouble. One night, some men came through looking to rustle cattle. We confronted them and there was a fight. I was a drinker back then and I was drunk that night. I hesitated, moved too slow, and one of the rustlers shot Jacob. He died in my arms while I begged God for another chance." Isabella's heart clenched at the raw anguish in his words. "I crawled into a bottle after that," Isaiah continued. "Spent 2 years destroying myself, blaming myself, wishing I'd been the one to die instead. Finally hit bottom when I woke up in a jail cell with no memory of how I got there. The sheriff, good man named Tom Williams, gave me a choice. Get help or rot. I chose help. Stopped drinking, started working again, but I couldn't stay in Texas. Too many memories, too many people who remembered Jacob and looked at me with pity or blame. So you came to California," Isabella said softly. "Fresh start. New place. Trying to forgive myself, though some days that feels impossible." He met her eyes again. "So you see, Miss Pierce, we're both carrying ghosts. Mine of what I failed to do, yours of what was done to you. Neither of us is whole, but maybe neither of us has to face the healing alone." Isabella felt tears prick her eyes, the first she'd allowed herself in months. "I don't know if I can be what you're hoping for." "I'm not hoping for anything except maybe friendship," Isaiah said. "Someone to talk to who understands what it's like to be haunted. Someone who won't judge the bad days. Someone who knows that healing isn't a straight line. Just friendship," Isabella asked, surprised at the small flicker of something that might have been disappointment. "For now, if that's what you need. I'm not in any position to offer more, and I suspect you're not ready to accept more. But I think we could help each other, if you're willing to try." Isabella wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, feeling both vulnerable and strangely lighter for having spoken her truth. "I don't go to social functions." "Then we'll go for a walk instead," Isaiah suggested. "Just around town, public places, daylight hours, nothing threatening. You can talk or not talk, whatever feels right. No expectations, no pressure." It was such a small thing, a walk around town, but to Isabella it felt monumental. Still, something in Isaiah's steady presence made her feel safer than she had in years. "Tomorrow afternoon, after I close the store." A smile transformed Isaiah's face, softening the hard edges and making him look younger. "Tomorrow afternoon. I'll be here at 5. After he left, Isabella stood in the empty store, her heart beating faster than normal. She told him the truth, the ugly reality she'd hidden from everyone in Oroville, and he hadn't fled. Instead, he'd offered his own truth in return, creating a fragile bridge of shared brokenness between them. That night, for the first time in months, Isabella didn't dream of Thomas's rage-filled face or the sound of a gunshot. Instead, she dreamed of gray-green eyes and a voice that said, "We're both healing," like it was a promise. True to his word, Isaiah appeared outside the store at exactly 5 the next afternoon. He'd cleaned up, shaved, and wore a clean shirt, though his work-worn boots and the slight bow in his legs marked him clearly as a horseman. Isabella had changed into her better dress, a simple blue cotton that brought out the amber flecks in her brown eyes. "You look lovely," Isaiah said, offering his arm. Isabella hesitated only a moment before taking it, feeling the solid strength of his forearm beneath her fingers. They walked slowly down Oroville's Main Street, past the assay office and the hotel, the blacksmith shop and the saloon. Isaiah kept up a running commentary about the work at Peterson's ranch, the horses he was training, the beauty of the California landscape so different from his native Texas. "It's drier here," he was saying. "The hills are golden instead of green and the air smells different, but there's something honest about it, you know. Everything stripped down to its essentials, no pretense." "Is that why you stayed?" Isabella asked. "After you left Texas, why California specifically?" Isaiah considered the question. "I worked my way west gradually, stopped in Arizona for a while, New Mexico before that. But California felt like the edge of the world, the last place to run before you hit the ocean. Figured if I couldn't make peace with myself here, I couldn't do it anywhere." They'd reached the edge of town, where the buildings gave way to rolling hills dotted with oak trees. The evening sun painted everything in shades of gold and amber, and the air was cooling as the heat of the day faded. "Can I ask you something?" Isabella said, pausing near a large oak. "Anything. Do you still blame yourself? For your brother?" Isaiah's jaw worked for a moment. "Every single day. But I'm learning to live with it, learning that punishing myself doesn't honor Jacob's memory. He'd want me to live really live, not just exist in a state of perpetual penance." "How did you learn that?" "Sheriff Williams, the one who helped me get sober. He lost a daughter to fever when she was young. He told me that grief and guilt will eat you alive if you let them, that the only way through is to acknowledge them but not let them define you. He said the people we lose would want us to find joy again, even though it feels impossible." Isabella absorbed his words, feeling them resonate in her chest. "I haven't felt joy in 4 years. I'm not sure I remember how." "Neither did I for the longest time," Isaiah admitted. "But little things started coming back. The satisfaction of training a difficult horse. The taste of good coffee in the morning. The sight of a sunset. At first, I felt guilty for noticing them, like I didn't deserve any happiness after what happened to Jacob. But then I realized that closing myself off to life was just another way of dying, and Jacob already did the actual dying. I owed it to him to at least try to live." They started walking back toward town as the sun sank lower. "What was he like?" "Jacob?" Isaiah's face softened. "He was light where I was serious, always singing, always finding the humor in things. He wanted to have his own ranch someday, raise horses, maybe find a good woman and have a passel of kids. He had his whole life ahead of him." "I'm sorry you lost him," Isabella said, and meant it deeply. "I'm sorry you went through what you did with your husband," Isaiah replied. "No one deserves that kind of treatment." They walked in companionable silence for a while, and Isabella realized with some surprise that she felt comfortable. Not anxious, not waiting for the other shoe to drop, just peaceful in a way she hadn't experienced in years. "Same time next week?" Isaiah asked when they reached the store. Isabella found herself smiling, a real smile that felt strange on her face. "Yes, I'd like that." Over the following weeks, their Sunday afternoon walks became a cherished ritual. Isabella found herself looking forward to them with an anticipation that both thrilled and terrified her. They talked about everything and nothing. Their childhoods, their hopes, their fears, the small observations about life in Oroville. Isaiah told her about the horses he was training, describing their personalities with such affection that Isabella laughed despite herself. "You talk about them like they're people," she teased one afternoon in late September. "They've got more sense than most people I've met," Isaiah countered with a grin. "And they're honest. A horse tells you exactly what it's thinking if you know how to listen. No hidden agendas, no lies. Is that why you prefer them to people?" Isaiah considered this. "Used to be, yes. These days, I'm finding certain people to be pretty tolerable." The way he looked at Isabella when he said it made warmth bloom in her chest. She was beginning to recognize the feeling as attraction, though it frightened her. She'd felt attracted to Thomas once, and look how that had ended. As if reading her thoughts, Isaiah said carefully, "You got quiet all of a sudden. What are you thinking?" One of the things Isabella appreciated most about Isaiah was his directness, the way he asked questions instead of making assumptions. "I was thinking that I'm starting to care about these walks, about spending time with you, and that scares me." "Why does it scare you?" "Because the last time I cared about a man, he hurt me in ways I'm still recovering from. Because I don't trust my own judgment anymore. Because what if I'm making the same mistake again?" Isaiah stopped walking and turned to face her fully. They were at the edge of town again, their usual turning point, with the vast California landscape spreading out behind them. "Isabella, look at me." She did, meeting those gray-green eyes that had become so familiar. "I can't promise that I'll never hurt you," Isaiah said, his voice steady and serious. "People hurt each other sometimes, even when they don't mean to. But I can promise that I will never, ever raise a hand to you in anger. I will never use my size or strength to intimidate you. I will never make you afraid of me. That is a vow I make to you right now, and I've never broken a vow in my life." Isabella's eyes filled with tears. "How can you be so sure? People change." "Because I know what it's like to fail someone I cared about. I know what it's like to live with that guilt. I would rather die than become the kind of man who terrorizes a woman. And if you ever, even once, feel unsafe with me, you tell me and I'll walk away. Your safety and peace of mind matter more than my feelings." The sincerity in his voice was undeniable. Isabella reached up and touched his face, feeling the slight rasp of stubble beneath her palm. It was the first time she'd initiated physical contact, and she felt him go very still, letting her set the pace. "I want to trust you," she whispered. "I'm trying to trust you." "That's enough," Isaiah said gently. "Trust takes time to build, especially when it's been shattered." "I'm not going anywhere." As autumn deepened and the weather turned cooler, their relationship continued to grow. Isaiah started coming to the store more frequently, helping Isabella with heavy lifting or repairs that needed a stronger hand. He fixed the loose board in the front step, mended the door to the storage room, and reinforced the shelves that had started to sag under the weight of goods. Mr. Henderson, who owned the store, noticed the changes. "That Pierce fellow seems to have taken a shine to you," he observed one morning when he came to review the books. "We're friends," Isabella said, but she couldn't help the slight flush that colored her cheeks. "Friendship's a good start," Mr. Henderson said with a knowing smile. He was a widower himself, a kind man in his 60s who'd given Isabella a chance when she'd arrived in Oroville with little more than a letter of reference and a desperate need for work. "He seems like a good man, and you seem happier lately, if you don't mind me saying so." Isabella realized it was true. She smiled more, slept better, felt more present in her daily life. The constant vigilance that had exhausted her for so long had eased, replaced by a cautious optimism she'd thought lost forever. In mid-October, the first real rain of the season came, a torrential downpour that turned the streets to mud and kept most people indoors. Isaiah showed up at the store anyway, soaked to the skin and grinning like a boy. "Are you insane?" Isabella demanded, ushering him inside and grabbing towels. "You'll catch your death." "Couldn't miss our walk," Isaiah said, water dripping from his hat brim. "We can't walk in this weather." Then we'll talk here instead if you'll allow it. Isabella shook her head, half exasperated and half charmed. At least get dry first, I'll make coffee. They sat in the back room of the store, listening to the rain hammer on the roof. Isaiah had draped his coat over a chair and rolled up his wet sleeves, and Isabella found her eyes drawn to his forearms, strong and tanned from outdoor work. She jerked her gaze away, embarrassed by the direction of her thoughts. "What are you thinking about?" Isaiah asked, cupping his hands around his coffee mug. "Nothing appropriate," Isabella admitted before she could stop herself. Isaiah's eyebrows rose and a slow smile spread across his face. "Is that so?" Isabella felt her cheeks flame. "Forget I said anything." "Not a chance." His smile gentled. "Isabella, it's all right to have those kinds of thoughts. You're a young woman and attraction is natural. It doesn't mean anything bad." "It feels complicated," she said quietly. "After Thomas, I thought I'd never want any man to touch me again. But lately, I find myself wondering what it would be like if you held my hand, or put your arm around me, or kissed me, and instead of being afraid, I just feel curious. And that feels like a betrayal of how careful I should be." Isaiah set down his coffee and moved closer, but not too close, respecting her space. "There's no should when it comes to healing. Some people never want to be touched again after trauma, and that's valid. Some people reclaim their bodies and their desires, and that's valid too. Whatever you feel is exactly what you're supposed to be feeling. What if I wanted to try something?" Isabella asked, her heart pounding. "Something small." "Like what?" "Like holding hands. Really holding hands, not just you offering your arm when we walk." Isaiah extended his hand, palm up, on the table between them. It was an invitation, not a demand, and Isabella appreciated that he let her come to him. She placed her hand in his, feeling the calluses on his palm, the warmth of his skin, the gentle way his fingers closed around hers. They sat like that for a long moment, rain drumming overhead, hands clasped on the scarred wooden table. Isabella waited for the panic to rise, for the memories to flood back, but instead she felt only a spreading warmth and a sense of rightness. "How does it feel?" Isaiah asked softly. "Safe," Isabella said, wonder in her voice. "It feels safe. Good. That's how it should always feel." They talked for hours that afternoon, hands linked across the table, sharing stories and dreams and fears. Isaiah told her about his parents' farm in Texas, long since sold after they died of cholera when he was 20. Isabella told him about her childhood in a small Nevada town, her father's death when she was 12, her mother's remarriage to a man who saw Isabella as a burden to be married off as quickly as possible. "Is that why you married Thomas so young?" Isaiah asked. Isabella nodded. "He came through town as a traveling merchant. He was handsome, charming, and he paid attention to me. My stepfather was eager to have one less mouth to feed. Looking back, there were signs, moments when Thomas's mask slipped, but I was too young and naive to recognize them. I thought I was in love. I thought I was starting a grand adventure." "You were barely more than a girl," Isaiah said, anger edging his voice, though Isabella knew it wasn't directed at her. "You deserve to be protected, not handed off to a man like that." "I used to blame myself," Isabella admitted. "Thought if I'd been smarter, more observant, I could have avoided it all. It wasn't your fault. None of it was your fault. I know that now, mostly. There are still days when the old thoughts creep back in. On those days, you tell me, and I'll remind you as many times as necessary that you deserved better then, and you deserve better now." As the rain finally began to ease and afternoon shifted toward evening, Isaiah reluctantly released her hand. "I should get back to the ranch. Peterson will wonder if I drowned." "Thank you for coming," Isabella said. "Even in this weather." Especially in this weather, Isaiah replied, shrugging into his still damp coat. I meant what I said. I'm not going anywhere. The weeks that followed brought them even closer. Isaiah began joining Isabella for supper sometimes, either at the small restaurant in town or in her room above the store, where she'd cook simple meals on her small stove. They played cards, read aloud to each other from the town's limited selection of books, and simply enjoyed each other's company. In early November, the Peterson Ranch hosted a barn dance to celebrate the end of the season. Isaiah asked Isabella to attend as his guest, and after much internal debate, she agreed. It would be her first social function since arriving in Oroville, and she was terrified. We don't have to stay long, Isaiah assured her as they rode toward the ranch in a borrowed wagon. If it gets overwhelming, we leave. No questions asked. The barn had been decorated with lanterns and fall garlands, and a small group of musicians played fiddles and guitars in the corner. The crowd was friendly and welcoming, and if anyone thought it odd that the reclusive store manager was attending on the arm of the new ranch hand, they were polite enough not to mention it. Isabella found herself actually enjoying the evening. She danced with Isaiah, his hand firm and steady at her waist, guiding her through the simple steps. She made conversation with some of the ranch wives, discovering they were kind women who didn't pry into her past. She laughed at the antics of the younger cowboys trying to impress girls with increasingly elaborate dance moves. You're having fun, Isaiah observed during a break in the music. I am, Isabella said, surprised by the realization. I can't remember the last time I had fun. You deserve fun. You deserve joy. You deserve all the good things life has to offer. Something in his tone made Isabella look at him more closely. What are you thinking? Isaiah pulled her gently toward a quieter corner of the barn. The noise of the party faded to a pleasant hum around them. I'm thinking that I've been falling in love with you for weeks now, and I'm not sure how much longer I can keep that to myself. Isabella's breath caught. She'd suspected, hoped even, but hearing the words spoken aloud made them real in a way that was both thrilling and terrifying. Isaiah, I don't know if I'm ready for that. I'm not asking you to be ready. I'm not asking you to say it back. I just needed you to know where I stand, what my intentions are. I love you, Isabella. I love your strength and your resilience. I love the way you've survived hell and still managed to be kind. I love the way you laugh when something genuinely amuses you, like you've surprised yourself. I love the way you think and talk and see the world. Tears spilled down Isabella's cheeks. I'm so broken, Isaiah. I don't know if I can be what you need. You're not broken, you're wounded, and there's a difference. Broken things can't be fixed. Wounded things heal given time and care. He cupped her face gently, his thumbs brushing away her tears. I'm not asking for perfection. I'm asking for a chance. A chance to court you properly, to show you what love should look like, to build something good together. What if I can't love you back? The question came out as a whisper. Then at least I'll have tried. At least I'll have put my heart on the line for something real. But Isabella, I don't think that's the problem. I think you're already halfway there and it scares you to death. He was right, and they both knew it. Isabella had been falling for him too, in the quiet moments and the comfortable silences, in the way he made her feel safe and seen and valued. It terrifies me, she admitted. The last time I loved a man, it nearly killed me. Thomas Bennett wasn't a man, he was a monster wearing a man's face. What he did to you had nothing to do with love and everything to do with control and cruelty. Love doesn't hurt, Isabella. Real love builds up instead of tearing down. It protects instead of destroying. How do I know the difference? How do I trust my own feelings when they led me so wrong before? Isaiah considered this carefully. You were 19, alone, with no one to guide you or protect you. You're 24 now, with experience and wisdom bought at a terrible price. You're not the same person you were then. And I'm not Thomas. Judge me by my actions, not by his. Have I given you any reason to doubt my word?" Isabella thought about the past months, reviewing every interaction and conversation. Isaiah had been nothing but patient, honest, and respectful. He'd shared his own pain and failures without minimizing hers. He'd kept every promise, respected every boundary, and never once made her feel pressured or unsafe. "No," she said finally, "you've been nothing but good to me." "Then give me a chance. Give us a chance. Let me court you properly. If at any point you want to stop, we stop." "You're in control, Isabella. Always." The idea of being in control of her own romantic life was still novel enough to take her breath away. With Thomas, she'd had no agency, no voice, no power. Isaiah was offering her all three. "All right," she said, her voice stronger now. "Court me. Show me what real love looks like." Isaiah's smile was brilliant, transforming his whole face. "May I kiss you, just once to seal the promise?" Isabella's heart raced, but it was anticipation rather than fear. "Yes." He leaned in slowly, giving her every opportunity to change her mind, and pressed his lips gently to hers. It was the softest, sweetest kiss imaginable. Nothing demanding or aggressive about it. Just a tender meeting of mouths that sent warmth cascading through Isabella's entire body. When he pulled back, his eyes were shining. "I'll spend every day proving I'm worthy of your trust," he said. "You already have," Isabella replied, and kissed him again. Their courtship over the following months was a revelation to Isabella. Isaiah courted her with a patience and thoughtfulness that continually surprised her. He brought her wildflowers he picked on his rides around the ranch. He saved up his wages to buy her a new shawl when winter set in. He wrote her simple, heartfelt notes that she treasured and kept in a small box by her bed. But more than the gifts, it was the way he treated her that mattered. He listened when she talked, really listened, and remembered the small details of her stories. He asked her opinion on things and valued her perspective. When she had nightmares about Thomas, which still happened occasionally, he held her and talked her through them without judgment. When she had good days where the past seemed far away, he celebrated with her. Christmas came, and Isabella spent it with Isaiah and some of the other ranch hands who had nowhere else to go. It was a simple celebration, but filled with laughter and warmth. Isaiah gave her a beautiful leather-bound journal. "For your thoughts," he said. "The ones you want to remember and the ones you need to release. Either way, they're yours to keep or burn as you see fit." Isabella gave him a new hat she'd saved for months to afford, and the look on his face made every penny worth it. As winter slowly gave way to early spring in 1879, Isabella realized that the fear that had defined her life for so long was fading. In its place grew confidence, joy, and love. Real love, the kind that felt nothing like what she'd experienced with Thomas. This was patient and kind, built on mutual respect and genuine care. One evening in March, as they walked along the river that ran near town, Isabella stopped and turned to Isaiah. "I love you," she said, the words coming easily and naturally. "I've loved you for a while now, but I needed to be sure, needed to know it was real. It is. You're real, this is real, and I love you." Isaiah pulled her into his arms, holding her close. "I love you too, so damn much." "I want more," Isabella said, feeling bold. "I want a future with you. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep beside you every night. I want to build a life together." "Is that a proposal, Miss Pierce?" Isaiah asked, his eyes dancing with mirth. "I suppose it is, unless you'd rather do the asking." "Oh, I'll do the asking properly," Isaiah assured her. "But I appreciate the sentiment, though there's something I need to tell you first, something I've been saving up for." Isabella's stomach clenched with sudden fear. "What is it?" "Nothing bad, I promise. I've been saving my wages since I came to Peterson's. Between that and some money my parents left me that I'd kept untouched, I have enough to buy a small piece of land. Nothing fancy, maybe 20 acres up in the hills, but enough for some horses and cattle. I want to build something of my own, something lasting, and I want to build it with you if you'll have me." Relief and joy flooded through Isabella. "Yes, yes, absolutely yes." "Then, Isabella Bennett Pierce, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife? I promise to love you, honor you, and protect you for all my days. I promise to be patient with the hard days and celebrate the good ones. I promise to build a life with you where you feel safe and cherished and free." "Yes," Isabella said through happy tears. "Yes, I'll marry you." They were married in late April in the small church in Oroville, with Mr. Henderson giving Isabella away, and several of the ranch hands standing up for Isaiah. It was a simple ceremony, but Isabella wore a new dress of cream-colored linen and carried wildflowers, and she'd never felt more beautiful. The wedding night was something Isabella had dreaded, memories of her first marriage haunting her despite all the healing she'd done. But Isaiah was patient and gentle, letting her set the pace, checking in with her constantly, making sure she felt safe and comfortable. What could have been traumatic became instead a beautiful reclaiming of her body and her desires. Isaiah made her feel cherished and desired in ways that brought tears to her eyes. "Are you all right?" he asked, concerned by the tears. "I'm perfect," Isabella assured him. "I just never knew it could be like this, that it could be good and gentle and full of love. It's always like this when two people truly care for each other," Isaiah said, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "And it gets better with time and trust." He was right. Over the weeks and months that followed, their physical relationship deepened along with their emotional bond. Isabella discovered that her body wasn't broken or damaged as she'd feared, just waiting for safe hands to touch it. Isaiah worked his final months at Peterson's while simultaneously preparing their land for building. He'd bought 25 acres in the foothills east of Oroville, with a creek running through it and good grazing land. With the help of some of the ranch hands, he built a small but sturdy house, barn, and corral. Isabella continued working at the general store until the house was ready, saving every penny she could to contribute to their new life. Mr. Henderson was sorry to lose her but happy for her happiness, and he promised she could always come back if she needed work. In September, they moved into their new home. It wasn't much, just 3 rooms and a loft, but it was theirs, built with their own hands and dreams. Isaiah started his horse training business, developing a reputation for his patient, effective methods. Isabella planted a garden, started keeping chickens, and helped with the gentler horses. Life settled into a rhythm that felt miraculous to them both. They worked hard during the day and spent their evenings together, talking and planning and simply enjoying each other's company. The nightmares that had plagued Isabella became less frequent, and when they did occur, Isaiah's steady presence helped chase them away. In the spring of 1880, Isabella realized she was pregnant. The discovery brought mixed emotions, joy at the new life growing inside her, but also fear. What if she couldn't be a good mother? What if her damaged past made her incapable of raising a child properly? Isaiah held her while she cried out her fears. "You're going to be an amazing mother," he told her. "You're strong and loving and resilient. Our child will be lucky to have you." "What if I make mistakes? What if I damage them the way I was damaged?" Every parent makes mistakes. The difference is you'll do it from a place of love, and you'll apologize when you're wrong, and you'll always put their well-being first. That's all any child needs. Their son was born in November, a healthy baby boy with his father's gray-green eyes and his mother's dark hair. They named him Jacob, after Isaiah's brother, and the choice felt like a healing of old wounds. Holding Jacob for the first time, Isabella felt a love so fierce and protective it took her breath away. This tiny person, so vulnerable and perfect, was theirs to love and protect and guide. She would make sure he grew up knowing gentleness and kindness, that he learned to treat others with respect, that he understood love was patient and kind, never cruel. "He's perfect," Isaiah said, his voice thick with emotion as he gazed at his son. "He is," Isabella agreed. "Our perfect little miracle." The first year of Jacob's life was exhausting but joyful. Isabella discovered she was a capable mother, her instincts strong and sure. Isaiah was a devoted father, getting up for nighttime feedings, changing diapers without complaint, and spending hours just watching his son sleep with wonder on his face. The horse business grew steadily. Isaiah's reputation spread, and ranchers from neighboring counties started bringing him their difficult animals to train. He had a gift for understanding horses, for seeing past their fear and resistance to the intelligent creatures beneath. Isabella helped when she could, managing the business side of things and handling the gentler horses herself. In the summer of 1881, Isabella found herself pregnant again. This pregnancy was easier than the first, perhaps because she knew what to expect and wasn't as afraid. Their daughter was born in February of 1882, a tiny thing with her mother's brown eyes and a surprising amount of dark hair. "What should we name her?" Isaiah asked, cradling the baby with practiced ease. "What about Grace?" Isabella suggested. "Because we've both been given so much grace, second chances we didn't deserve but received anyway." "Grace Pierce." Isaiah tried out the name. "I love it. Welcome to the world, Gracie girl." With 2 children, life became even busier, but Isabella thrived in ways she never would have imagined during those dark days in the general store. She was a mother, a wife, a partner in a growing business. She was loved and valued and safe. The fear that had defined so much of her life had been replaced by confidence and joy. When Jacob was 4 and Grace was 2, they expanded the house, adding more rooms and a larger kitchen. The business had grown enough to hire a young man from town to help with the training and daily care of the horses. Their small ranch was becoming something substantial, a legacy to pass on to their children. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the children play in the yard, Isabella leaned against Isaiah's shoulder. "Do you remember the day you walked into the general store asking for supplies?" "Best day of my life," Isaiah said, pressing a kiss to her hair. "Though I didn't know it at the time. I was so broken then, so convinced I'd never be whole again. You were never broken, love, just wounded and healing." "You healed me," Isabella said softly. "No, you healed yourself. I just had the privilege of being there while you did it." Isabella turned to look at him, this man who'd taken her broken pieces and helped her forge them into something stronger and more beautiful than before. "We healed each other." "Yeah," Isaiah agreed, his eyes soft with love. "We did." As the sun set over their land, painting the California hills in shades of gold and crimson, Isabella reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From the terror of her first marriage to the safety of this one, from the loneliness of the general store to the fullness of this life, from believing she was damaged goods to understanding she was simply human, worthy of love and capable of giving it. The years continued to pass in a pattern of work and love and growth. Jacob grew into a serious, thoughtful boy who loved horses as much as his father did. Grace was spirited and joyful, filling the house with laughter and endless questions. In 1885, another son joined the family, named Thomas after Isabella's father, a name she'd reclaimed from its darker associations. The ranch expanded further. Isaiah's training methods had made him something of a local legend, and they now had a steady stream of clients. Isabella had started breeding horses herself, developing an eye for bloodlines and conformation that complemented Isaiah's training skills. Together, they built something neither could have achieved alone. On their 10th wedding anniversary in 1889, Isaiah took Isabella on a trip to San Francisco, their first time away from the ranch since its founding. They stayed in a real hotel, ate in fancy restaurants, and walked along the waterfront hand in hand. It felt like a honeymoon, delayed but all the sweeter for the wait. "Do you have any regrets?" Isabella asked one evening as they watched the ships in the harbor. "Not a single one," Isaiah said firmly. "Well, maybe one. I regret that I didn't find you sooner." "Everything happened when it was supposed to," Isabella said, a conviction she truly felt. "If we'd met earlier, we wouldn't have been ready for each other. We needed to go through what we went through to become who we are." "When did you get so wise?" "I learned from the best," Isabella said, squeezing his hand. They returned to the ranch refreshed and ready for whatever came next. The children were growing, the business was thriving, and their love had only deepened with time. The nightmares had stopped years ago, and Isabella rarely thought about Thomas anymore, except as a distant, unpleasant memory that had no power over her present. In 1892, as Jacob prepared to turn 12 and started taking on more responsibility around the ranch, Isabella discovered she was pregnant again. This pregnancy was unexpected but welcomed, and their youngest daughter arrived that fall, named Clara after Isaiah's mother. The house that had once seemed so spacious was now cheerfully crowded with the noise and chaos of 4 children. Meals were boisterous affairs, with everyone talking over each other and sharing the events of their day. Jacob was already showing promise as a horseman, and Grace had developed a talent for drawing that they encouraged. Young Thomas, at 7, was the most social of their children, making friends with every visitor to the ranch. Isabella often found herself pausing in her daily work to simply appreciate the life she'd built. She'd stand in the kitchen, flour on her hands from baking, and listen to the sound of her children's laughter, her husband's voice as he worked with the horses, and feel overwhelmed with gratitude. "You all right?" Isaiah would ask, finding her like that. "More than all right," she'd reply. "Just counting my blessings." As the children grew older, they learned the full story of their parents' pasts. Isabella and Isaiah believed in honesty, in teaching their children that people could overcome terrible things and build beautiful lives. Jacob was old enough now to understand that the uncle he was named after had died young, and that his father had struggled with grief and alcohol, but had found the strength to change. Grace asked about her mother's first marriage when she was 10, old enough to handle the truth in age-appropriate terms. Isabella told her that she'd once been married to a man who hurt her, but that she'd been brave enough to leave and start over, and that's how she'd found their father. "Were you scared?" Grace asked. "Terrified," Isabella admitted. "But being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing what needs to be done even when you're frightened. Like when I have to give a speech at school." "Exactly like that," Isabella said, pulling her daughter close. "You feel the fear and do it anyway." The ranch continued to prosper through the 1890s. They now had 3 full-time employees and had expanded to over 100 acres through careful purchases of neighboring land. Isaiah was considered one of the finest horse trainers in Northern California, and Isabella's breeding program had produced several prize-winning animals. In 1899, as the century drew to a close, Isaiah and Isabella celebrated their 20th wedding anniversary. Their children, ranging from 17 to 7 years old, helped plan a party that brought together friends from throughout the county. The house and barn were decorated with lanterns and flowers, and there was music and dancing late into the night. As the party wound down and the children went to bed, Isaiah and Isabella walked out to the creek that ran through their property, the same creek that had been there when they'd first bought the land 2 decades earlier. 20 years, Isabella marveled. Some days it feels like forever, and other days it feels like we just met. Best 20 years of my life, Isaiah said. He was 51 now, his dark hair liberally streaked with silver, but his eyes were as clear and kind as they'd been that first day in the general store. Isabella, at 45, had a few silver strands of her own and laugh lines around her eyes. She thought she looked better now than she had at 24, when fear and trauma had made her seem older than her years. Now she looked like a woman who'd been well loved, who'd laughed often and lived fully. "You remember what you said to me that day?" she asked. "When I told you I was damaged goods." "I said we were both broken and both healing," Isaiah replied, pulling her close. "We did heal, didn't we? Both of us. We did. And we built something amazing in the process." They stood by the creek for a long time, holding each other under the stars, listening to the night sounds of their ranch and the distant music still playing from the barn. It was a moment of perfect contentment, the kind that comes from knowing you're exactly where you're supposed to be, with exactly who you're supposed to be with. The new century brought changes to Oroville and to the Pierce Ranch. Automobiles started appearing in town, though Isaiah remained convinced that horses were more reliable. Jacob, now 19, had taken over much of the day-to-day training operation, freeing Isaiah to focus on the breeding program and business management. He'd inherited his father's gift with horses and his mother's head for business, a potent combination. Grace, at 18, had surprised everyone by announcing she wanted to become a teacher. She'd been accepted to a training program in Sacramento and would leave in the fall. It was the first time one of their children would venture out into the wider world, and Isabella felt the bittersweet pang of parental pride mixed with anxiety. "She'll be fine," Isaiah assured her as they helped Grace pack. "We raised her to be strong and smart and capable. She can handle whatever comes." "I know," Isabella said. "I just worry the world can be so harsh." And she knows that, but she also knows how to stand up for herself, how to recognize danger, how to ask for help when she needs it. We taught her all of that. It was true. Both Isabella and Isaiah had been intentional about teaching their children to recognize healthy relationships from unhealthy ones, to understand that love should never hurt, to know their own worth. The lessons they'd learned through pain, they'd passed on with love, hoping to spare their children some of the suffering they'd endured. Thomas, at 15, was showing an interest in the business side of the ranch. He loved numbers and planning, spending hours going over the books with his mother, learning about profit margins and breeding schedules and market trends. Clara, the baby at 8 years old, remained undecided about her future but showed a talent for music that they encouraged. Life settled into a new rhythm as the children began to venture toward adulthood. Jacob started courting a young woman from town, the daughter of the blacksmith, and Isabella saw in his careful respect for her the lessons they'd taught him about treating women well. Grace wrote letters from Sacramento full of enthusiasm for her studies and the new friends she was making. In 1905, Jacob married his sweetheart, Emily, in a beautiful ceremony at the ranch. Watching her son take his vows, Isabella cried happy tears, grateful that he was entering marriage with such different expectations and examples than she'd had at his age. Emily was a sweet, capable young woman who clearly adored Jacob, and the feeling was mutual. The young couple built a small house on the ranch property, and Jacob continued working with the horses while Emily helped Isabella with the household and garden. It felt right to have the next generation taking root on the land they'd worked so hard to build. Grace came home from Sacramento in 1906 with her teaching certificate and news that she'd also met someone, a young lawyer named Daniel Morrison. Isaiah thoroughly vetted the young man, and Isabella had to smile at her husband's protective instincts. But Daniel proved himself worthy, and they were married a year later. Unlike Jacob, Grace moved away, settling with Daniel in Sacramento where he practiced law, and she taught at a school for girls. It was harder to let her go, but Isabella took comfort in the joy that radiated from her daughter whenever they visited. Thomas, following his interest in business, enrolled in a commercial college and showed every sign of becoming a successful businessman. Clara, now 13, had developed into a talented pianist and singer, performing at local events and church services. As Isabella and Isaiah moved into their 50s and then 60s, they gradually handed over more of the ranch operations to Jacob and his growing family. Emily had given them 3 grandchildren by 1912, 2 boys and a girl who filled the ranch with new energy and laughter. "We're grandparents," Isabella marveled, holding her newest grandchild. "When did we get old enough to be grandparents? Speak for yourself," Isaiah teased. "I'm in my prime." At 64, he still worked with the horses daily, though he let Jacob handle the more difficult ones now. Isabella, at 60, still managed the household and breeding records, though Emily had taken over much of the cooking and day-to-day running of the house. Grace visited often with Daniel and their 2 children, and the ranch would fill with family for holidays and special occasions. Thomas had married a woman he met at college and was making a good living in San Francisco as a business consultant. Only Clara remained unmarried, though at 21 she had plenty of time. One evening in 1913, as Isabella and Isaiah sat on the porch watching the sunset, a familiar ritual from decades of marriage, Isabella reflected on the incredible journey of their life together. "Do you remember being in that general store?" she asked. "Being so scared and alone that you'd forgotten what it felt like to be happy." "I remember," Isaiah said, taking her hand, their fingers intertwined with the ease of long practice. "I also remember thinking you were the bravest person I'd ever met, surviving what you'd survived and still finding the strength to try again." "I wasn't brave. I was terrified. Bravery is being terrified and doing it anyway. You taught me that." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sun paint the sky in brilliant colors. Somewhere in the distance, they could hear their grandchildren playing, their laughter carried on the evening breeze. "I'm glad you walked into that store," Isabella said softly. "I'm glad you saw past my walls and convinced me to try again. I'm glad you took a chance on a broken-down cowboy with more baggage than sense," Isaiah replied. "You saved my life, Isabella, in every way a person can be saved." "We saved each other," she corrected gently. "That's what love does. It doesn't fix everything, but it gives you a reason to do the hard work of healing." Isaiah lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. "I love you, just as much as the day we married. More, even, because now I know all the ways you're extraordinary." "I love you too," Isabella said. "Thank you for being patient with me, for showing me what real love looks like, for building this beautiful life with me." As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, they remained on the porch, 2 people who'd found each other when both were broken, and had healed together into something stronger and more beautiful than either could have been alone. The ranch around them stood as testament to what could be built when two damaged people chose healing over hiding, love over fear, hope over despair. Their story wasn't one of perfect people or a fairy tale romance. It was real and messy and hard-won, built on honest communication, mutual respect, and the daily choice to keep choosing each other. It was a story of second chances and new beginnings, of finding light after darkness and building joy from the ashes of pain. And as they sat together in the gathering dark, hands linked as they'd been for over 30 years, Isabella and Isaiah Pierce knew that every hard moment, every fear faced, every choice to trust again had been worth it. They'd taken their broken pieces and created something whole, something lasting, something worth passing on to the generations that would come after them. The cowboy and the woman who'd believed herself damaged goods had proven that healing was possible, that love could be kind, and that the best things in life were worth fighting for, worth risking your heart for, worth believing in even when belief seemed impossible. Their legacy wasn't just the ranch or the business or even their children and grandchildren, though those were all important. Their true legacy was the proof that damaged people could heal, that broken hearts could love again, and that the darkest pasts didn't have to dictate the future. As the moon rose over the California hills, casting silver light across the land they'd built together, Isabella leaned her head on Isaiah's shoulder and smiled. They were both healing, both whole, both exactly where they were meant to be. And that was more than enough. That was everything.